What would your younger self say about how your family turned out?
While my brother was busy popping champagne on a yacht surrounded by 30 sunburnt influencers and my parents beamed at him like he'd just cured cancer, I was sitting in a quiet apartment, again, eating leftover Thai food and reading a happy birthday, kiddo. Text my mom, probably copy-pasted from last year. I didn't reply. I just opened Zillow. The first time I realized my birthday didn't mean much to my family, I was 9 years old and sitting in a folding chair in our backyard while my brother Ryan, who was 11 at the time, tore into a second cake because he didn't like chocolate, which happened to be the one I had picked out for my own party. He had already blown out my candles by then, and I still remember the way the adults laughed, dismissing my frustration as sibling fun and nudging me to share because he's younger in spirit. That phrase stuck with me over the years, younger in spirit, a convenient excuse that covered everything from stealing attention at every family dinner to skipping my graduation because he had a brand meeting in Cabo. As the years went by, I stopped expecting anything. Not the right kind of cake. Not a hug. Not even a phone call. Just the usual, a casual, delayed text, sometimes even a reused one, and the occasional digital gift card with my name spelled wrong in the message field. This year was no different. I woke up on my 34th birthday to a silent phone, a half-full inbox of spam, and a front-page splash of my brother on some lifestyle blog celebrating his latest sponsored yacht event in Miami, complete with champagne towers, a neon sign that said, Ryan's World, and my parents in the background holding flutes and flashing forced smiles as if they hadn't forgotten, again, that their daughter was born on the same day. At first, I did what I always did, nothing. I had my quiet morning routine, fed the cat, answered a few work emails, and tried not to let that dull ache in my chest turn into full-blown resentment. But something about this year felt different, and not just because I was another year older, it was the weight of repetition, the unshakable sense that I had let this pattern go on too long without ever confronting it or changing course. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't even rage text my best friend like I did the year before. Instead, I opened the Zillow app, searched for ocean view properties in Southern California, and bookmarked a listing I had been watching for months, a sleek, modern cliffside home with wide glass walls and a wraparound deck. The kind of place you don't furnish with clutter, but with light and silence. I had the cash. That was the one thing I had quietly built while Ryan was busy becoming a digital personality and raking in likes for his collabs with reality show rejects. I didn't brag about it. I didn't post about my work or my late nights or my startup that got bought out last year. While Ryan went viral for taste-testing tequila brands, I was in a co-working basement convincing 3 hedge funds to back my platform. No one in my family even asked what I did for a living. My mom once introduced me at a wedding as the smart one, but quiet, like I was some sort of glorified intern who happened to pay her own rent in a city they still considered too much for someone single and unattached. I looked around my apartment, which I kept clean but not clinical, a few photos of friends, a record player I hadn't used in weeks, and a tiny balcony that barely fit a chair, and I realized I didn't want to just react this year. I wanted to pivot. Not out of anger. Not even out of sadness. Just a quiet shift, the kind you don't announce until the silence itself becomes deafening. The doorbell rang around noon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find a delivery bag hanging from the knob. Thai food. No note. No name. Just the same damn order they sent me last year. Yellow curry, extra rice, and a spring roll that always arrived soggy. I didn't need a DNA test to know it was from my mother. I didn't need it. I tossed it in the fridge, poured myself a glass of wine, and went back to Zillow. The house I liked had just lowered its price by $50,000. I clicked Contact Agent without hesitation. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends. Not colleagues. Not even my hairdresser, who usually got more updates on my life than my father. That night, while Ryan posted a video of himself swinging from a rope into turquoise water with a hashtag that read #BirthdayKing, I scrolled through the listing photos again. The place had a name, Suncliffe, etched in wood above the main gate like a promise. And as I watched his video autoplay with the sound off, I could almost hear the waves from my future deck and the crack of cold silence I'd let echo back when they finally noticed I wasn't around. I turned off my phone, turned off the lights, and sat in that dark apartment, not sad, not angry, just still. Tomorrow, I'd wire the money. Tomorrow, I'd buy my freedom. And this time, I wouldn't say a single word. I'd just let Instagram do the talking when the time was right. The funny thing about silence is how people mistake it for absence, as if just because I didn't respond or react, I wasn't paying attention or keeping score, as if my refusal to play their game meant I had no game of my own, when in fact, the opposite was true. I had spent years perfecting a strategy built on invisibility, learning how to let them talk, let them ignore, let them celebrate him, while I quietly stacked every slight, every forgotten birthday, every flippant "You're so independent" comment into a mountain they didn't even realize I was standing on top of. And when I finally chose to make a move, it wasn't dramatic or loud or messy. It was surgical, quiet, precise, and irreversible. The day after my birthday, while my brother's face was still plastered across party accounts and my parents were probably sipping mimosas with his friends, basking in the glow of another successful performance, I drove out to Malibu under a slate gray sky that threatened rain but never delivered, the kind of sky that felt honest, not trying to impress anyone, just existing. I wore jeans, no makeup, and a baseball cap pulled low over my eyes, because I didn't need to look like money to have it, and because I didn't want to be seen as anything other than what I was, a buyer, not a beggar. The house, Suncliffe, was even more stunning in person than the photos suggested. It sat alone at the end of a winding road, just beyond a rusted iron gate that opened automatically when the realtor tapped his phone, and I remember thinking how fitting it was that this place, this sanctuary, opened without a key, just a code, just permission. Inside, the air smelled like new floors and salt, the kind of salt that seeps in through open windows when the ocean is close enough to hear, but not close enough to threaten. Everything was white and glass and wood, not sterile but intentional, like whoever designed it understood that luxury wasn't about chandeliers or gold accents, it was about space, the ability to breathe without bumping into someone else's expectations. I didn't tour it like a prospective buyer. I walked through like someone returning to a memory she hadn't made yet. The kitchen faced the cliff, with a counter so wide and smooth I imagined placing a glass of wine on it and watching the sun drop into the sea like a secret. The primary bedroom had windows instead of walls and a bed that looked less like furniture and more like a decision. And the deck, the infamous deck, wrapped around the entire back half of the house, hanging out over the edge just enough to make you feel daring, but not stupid. It was a place built for silence. A place built for someone who had something to say but knew the power of waiting. I didn't haggle. I didn't ask for time. I didn't blink when he said the price. I pulled out a bank statement from my tote bag, slid it across the marble island, and watched the man's eyebrows twitch slightly when he realized I wasn't just serious, I was ready. He stammered something about escrow and inspections, and I cut him off, not rudely, just efficiently, and told him I'd have the funds wired by morning and the paperwork reviewed by my attorney before the end of the day. He looked at me like I'd just handed him a loaded gun and told him to be careful. I thanked him, stepped back out into the cool wind, and sat in my car for a full 5 minutes before starting the engine, not because I was second-guessing anything, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone else's permission to feel proud. That night, I posted a single story to my Instagram. Just a view, no face, no caption, no location tag of the sunset through a glass railing, soft oranges and purples bleeding into each other like a painting that never needed a frame. It lasted 15 seconds. That was it. But within 20 minutes, Ryan had messaged me. "Where is this? You in Cabo or something?" I didn't reply. I didn't even open it. I let the scene marker sit there like a stone in his gut, the first unanswered ping in what would become a long chain of questions he didn't know how to ask without admitting he was curious. By midnight, I had 3 more messages, one from Ryan's girlfriend, one from a girl I hadn't spoken to since college who worked in PR now, and one from our cousin Ashley. who used to copy my outfits in middle school and now only texted when she wanted tickets to something she assumed I had access to. All three asked variations of the same question. Is this that house on the cliff? The one that sold last week. Wait, did you buy that place? OMG, tell me this isn't real. I turned off my phone, folded my arms behind my head, and stared at the ceiling like it owed me something. I wasn't going to answer. Not yet. I wanted them to sit in the same silence they'd wrapped me in for years, to feel what it was like to shout into a void and get nothing back, not because I was cruel, but because I was done offering clarity to people who only noticed me when it suited them. In the morning, I wired the money. The attorney called to confirm, and I signed the paperwork electronically from my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a half smile that I didn't feel the need to explain to anyone. By the time my parents remembered to text me again, a full 48 hours after my birthday, the house was mine. Their message said, "Hope you had a peaceful day. Love you so much, sweetie." I didn't respond. I just posted a photo of my new front door, barely visible through a glass panel, with the caption, "Quiet beginnings." It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was preparation. The board was set. The pieces were moving. And they didn't even know they were part of the game. There's a kind of satisfaction that comes not from proving someone wrong in a single dramatic gesture, but from letting them watch you become someone they no longer understand. Someone they misjudged so thoroughly and for so long that their only remaining option is to observe you from behind the glass, whispering to each other in confusion while you say nothing, offer no explanations, and give them no ground to stand on. After closing on the house, I didn't throw a housewarming party. I didn't tell a soul outside of my lawyer and the transaction team. I moved in quietly, slowly, piece by piece, the way you slip into something warm after years of wearing clothes that never quite fit. I didn't even take time off work. I just packed up my laptop and answered emails from a lounge chair with my feet propped up on teakwood, the ocean breathing rhythmically below me, as if I had finally tuned my life to the right frequency. The first week, I posted nothing, not a story, not a photo, not a hint. I let my absence stretch long enough for people to wonder where I had gone, let the silence accumulate weight. Then, on a Thursday morning, as the sun rose behind a light marine layer that made everything look like it had been airbrushed by God himself, I posted one image. It was just a corner of the living room, no sweeping views, no labels, no faces, a minimalist couch, a long linen curtain billowing slightly from an open window, and a coffee mug perched on a woodblock side table, casting a perfect oval shadow on the stone floor. The caption was a single word, settling. That was all it took. The comments didn't pour in all at once. Not yet. It began as a trickle, the kind that most people wouldn't notice, but I recognized the scent immediately, the faint whiff of curiosity dressed up as politeness. "This space looks incredible," wrote a girl from college who once told me I was too ambitious to be likable. "Where is this?" asked another, feigning casual interest while clearly trying to reverse image search the photo. I didn't respond to any of them. Not publicly. Not privately. I let the post sit, let the algorithms do their thing, and I watched the impressions climb like blood pressure in a family group chat before Thanksgiving dinner. Ryan was the first to fold. 3 days after the post went up, he texted again, this time not just a casual, "What's up?" but a full paragraph laced with poorly masked anxiety. "Hey, just wondering, saw your post. Are you in Tulum or something? That place looks insane. Hope you're good." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. He was already unraveling, and I knew it. My brother, for all his online charisma and sponsored charm, had one fatal flaw. He needed to be the most interesting person in every room, real or virtual, and the moment he wasn't, he began to disintegrate. I wasn't competing with him. I wasn't even in the same race. But the silence I maintained began to feel, to him, like thunder. Then came the post that cracked everything open. I had spent the morning reading on the deck a first edition Joan Didion I'd bought as a gift to myself the day the wire transfer cleared, and just before noon, I took a short video. It was a slow pan across the edge of the infinity pool, the water catching the sun in tiny prisms, the horizon line so clear it looked like I had drawn it with a ruler. No music. No filter. Just the sound of wind and the faint hum of waves below. I posted it with the caption, "Lunch break." That was it. And that was enough. Within hours, my inbox was chaos. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me since our grandmother's funeral suddenly wanted to catch up. A girl from high school I'd barely known commented obsessed on 3 consecutive posts and then messaged asking if I was looking for a roommate just for the summer. Even my father, the same man who once told me I'd be lonely forever if I didn't learn to stop correcting people, sent me a terse email asking if I'd moved again, with no follow-up question, no punctuation, and no sign that he knew how to be curious without being condescending. But it was my mother's reaction that surprised me most. She didn't write. She didn't call. She just posted a family photo on her own profile, one from Ryan's birthday party, cropped and filtered, with a caption about grateful hearts and golden children. It didn't mention me. It never did. But I noticed what she was trying to do. She was reclaiming the narrative. Her silence wasn't passive now, it was pointed. She wanted control back. She wanted the spotlight realigned. She wanted the old script, Ryan in the lead, Melissa the supportive ghost in the wings. But the audience had already seen a different show, and some of them had started asking questions. I received a group text from my cousin Ashley the next day, the same one who had once told me I wasn't really Instagram material. It was titled Brunch and included my mother, my father, Ryan, his girlfriend, and a few of the usual family satellites who showed up when things got interesting, but disappeared when anything required depth. The message said, "Hey, thinking of doing a little Sunday catch-up, everyone's around. Would love to see you, Mel. You've been quiet lately." Quiet. As if that wasn't the point. As if the quiet wasn't the entire weapon. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't want to go. But I knew I would. Not for them. Not even for closure. I'd go for the same reason you let a match burn just long enough to catch the wick of something bigger. I waited 2 days, then replied simply, "Sure. Let me know the time." No heart. No punctuation. No confirmation that I was flattered or amused or excited. Just presence. Just the reminder that I was still here, not behind, not beneath, not forgotten, but rising and watching and waiting to speak when it mattered most. Sunday arrived with the kind of sunlight that looks delicate but stings if you stay out in it too long, the kind of light that exposes everything, the cracks in smiles, the tension in voices, the subtle shifts of posture when people think you aren't watching. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, not because I was trying to make an entrance, but because I had no desire to be seated first. To endure that awkward moment where everyone pretends to be surprised and delighted to see me while calculating whether I'm about to say something that forces them to acknowledge the invisible distance they've helped create. The brunch was held at a trendy cafe downtown, one of those over-designed places with mismatched chairs that are intentionally uncomfortable and waiters who pretend not to care how long you've been waiting for your eggs. I walked in wearing a linen dress, sunglasses that covered half my face, and an expression I had spent years perfecting, not cold, not aggressive, but detached. In a way that made people question whether they'd ever truly known me at all. They were already seated, my mother at the center like a queen at court, my father beside her, already glancing at his watch, Ryan at the far end, leaning back in his chair like he owned the block, his girlfriend smiling too brightly, too early. Like someone trying to impress a casting director she didn't know was already disinterested. The rest of the table was peppered with familiar faces, cousins and tag-alongs, the usual family satellites who hovered near the sunniest personality and rarely noticed who got burned. My chair was empty, naturally, and my arrival was greeted with the usual overcompensation, too many voices saying my name at once, too many hands gesturing to the menu as if I couldn't read, too many fake apologies for not ordering for me. I smiled politely, slid into my seat, and took in the scene with the quiet calm of someone who had already decided this wasn't a reunion, it was reconnaissance. The conversation started predictably, Ryan talking about a brand deal that almost collapsed because the CEO didn't vibe with the concept, my mother nodding dutifully while casually mentioning that Ryan's friends are such visionaries, my father muttering something about the value of connections in this economy. No one asked what I'd been working on. No one mentioned the house, not directly. But I saw it in their eyes, the weight of not knowing. My mother glanced at me several times, her expression flickering between curiosity and caution, as if she was trying to gauge whether I would bring it up, whether I would weaponize their neglect or let them pretend it never happened. I waited. I let the meal stretch, let the tension build like pressure behind a dam, all smiles and small talk and occasional forced laughter, until the moment arrived on its own. It was Ryan, predictably, who cracked first. He leaned forward, the tone of his voice shifting just enough to draw the table's attention without making it seem intentional. "So, Mel," he said, swirling his mimosa like it owed him something, "what you been up to lately? I mean, you've been kinda off the grid." There it was, the bait, the opening, the first attempt to reassert control by acting casual. I met his eyes, held them for just a second longer than comfort allowed, and smiled. "Oh, not much," I said, sipping my coffee without breaking eye contact. "Just watching the algorithm work." The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it was deep, the kind that sinks into furniture and lives under skin. My father raised an eyebrow, my mother blinked twice, and Ryan gave a half-laugh that didn't land. "What's that mean?" he asked, pretending amusement, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. I didn't answer. I just turned my attention back to my plate, cutting into my eggs as if we hadn't just shifted the tectonic plates of this family's hierarchy. They tried to recover. My mother changed the subject with a forced chuckle about old family vacations. My father asked if anyone had seen the latest market projections, and Ryan's girlfriend began talking about a yoga retreat she was totally maybe considering. But the damage was done. I had said nothing and somehow said everything. They were off balance now, and I let them stay that way. I didn't bring up the house. I didn't mention Malibu or ocean views or paperwork. I didn't describe the way the light pours into the hallway at exactly 7:30 in the morning, or how I fall asleep to the sound of waves and wake to complete silence. I didn't brag. I didn't gloat. I just let their imaginations do the work, let the void between what they thought they knew and what they suspected expand into a chasm they didn't know how to cross. After brunch, we stood outside in the bright sun, the group splitting off into smaller conversations, people checking phones, pretending they weren't dying to ask the question out loud. Ryan pulled me aside, just slightly, not far enough to be private, but enough to signal that he wanted a word without everyone listening. "Seriously, though," he said, his voice lower, less performative now, "what's going on with you? I mean, that place in your post, was that real?" I looked at him. My brother, who had grown up in the warm spotlight of our parents' endless praise, who had always assumed the world would rearrange itself to match his desires, who had never once asked me how I was doing without a camera rolling or a crowd watching. And I said the most honest thing I'd said to him in years. "It's all real, Ryan. You just never bothered to notice." Then I turned, walked away, and didn't look back. That evening, as the light faded behind the cliffs and I sat barefoot on the deck of my home, not a rental, not a borrowed backdrop for a social post, but mine, I opened Instagram and posted a short reel. Just a slow shot of the waves crashing against the rocks below, the camera pulling back to show the edge of the infinity pool, the glass railing, and the curve of the moon already rising. The audio? A soft instrumental. No words. The caption read, "Rebuilt. Alone. On purpose." Within minutes, the comments started piling in. Within the hour, my mother had texted. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say, not because I'd said too much, but because for the first time in my life, I had let them hear what silence really sounded like. There's a peculiar kind of poetry in watching people who have ignored you for years suddenly scramble to rewrite their version of your story, especially when the version you've lived quietly, without theatrics or approval, turns out to be far more compelling than the curated fiction they've built around themselves. In the days that followed the brunch, a slow but unmistakable shift occurred, not just in my family's behavior, which became increasingly erratic and transparent, but in the texture of my own silence, which had once been the result of exclusion and emotional fatigue, but now existed as a deliberate, almost strategic atmosphere, a calm that unnerved them far more than any outburst ever could have. The reel I posted that evening didn't include my face, didn't offer context, and didn't beg for likes. Yet it reached further and resonated deeper than anything Ryan had ever posted in the dozens of self-congratulatory birthday montages and cocktail-fueled party videos he'd thrown into the digital void over the years. The comment section beneath that reel erupted within hours, not with strangers, but with people I had grown up with, people who had once looked through me at family barbecues or who had asked me, in front of others, "Do you even use Instagram?" With that familiar smirk that always wrapped insult in the disguise of curiosity. They weren't subtle now. "Is this your place? This is incredible. Wait, where is this?" Questions layered with awe and confusion, dressed up as compliments, but trembling beneath with the realization that they had missed something, something important, something irreversible. The ones who had always spoken over me suddenly wanted answers. The ones who had never asked how I was suddenly demanded to know how I had pulled this off. The irony was thick enough to slice. My direct messages were worse. They came in waves, like tides, each one more desperate than the last. My cousin Ashley sent me voice notes at 2 a.m, her voice heavy with wine and half-truths, saying she always knew I'd do something cool one day, and asking if she could come visit, just for the weekend, no pressure. A former colleague I hadn't heard from in over 5 years messaged me twice in the same day, once to congratulate me on finally living your best life, and again to ask, thinly veiled, whether I'd be interested in investing in his startup. Even my father, who had long mastered the art of saying little while conveying even less, sent me a carefully worded email. "It seems like things are going well. Maybe we misread your silence. Let us know if you're open to reconnecting. Your mother is worried." Worried. The word sat in my inbox like a cracked ornament, delicate, useless, and decades too late. But what truly cemented everything, the confirmation that my silence had achieved more than years of compliance ever had, was a comment left by Ryan himself, not on my most recent post, but on the one before that, the one with the glass door and the caption, "Quiet beginnings." His comment read, "So you just weren't gonna tell us?" No punctuation, no emoji, just raw resentment disguised as curiosity, an accusation wrapped in disappointment, as if I had betrayed some unspoken family contract by not informing them of the life I'd built without their applause. I didn't reply. I let his question hang there unanswered, visible to the dozens of mutual connections who would undoubtedly see it and wonder what he meant, who would ask themselves what he had missed, or rather, who he had overlooked. The messages from my mother started piling up shortly after. At first, they were polite, almost performative. "Saw your latest video, sweetheart. Looks like paradise." Followed by increasingly probing questions. "When did you move? Where is this? Are you okay?" Then came the shift, subtle at first, then sharper. "I wish you'd told us. You didn't have to do this alone. Family should be involved in moments like this." And finally, the guilt grenades, tossed like petals on a burning bridge. "We were always proud of you, even if we didn't say it enough. Your brother's been going through a lot. We didn't mean to neglect you. Don't punish us for being imperfect." I read every message. I didn't respond to any of them. It wasn't vindictiveness that kept me silent, not anymore, but the realization that there was nothing I could say that would be heard clearly, nothing I could offer that wouldn't be warped into a narrative that served them. They didn't want the truth. They wanted reassurance that their ignorance hadn't cost them something permanent. But it had. And even if I were to sit them down and lay it all out, the years of emotional invisibility, the birthdays forgotten or overshadowed, the subtle but unrelenting reminders that I was tolerated rather than celebrated, they would only blink and say, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" As if it was my responsibility to shout over their distractions, their pride, their golden child. That evening, I posted one final image. It was old, a scanned photograph from a shoebox I hadn't opened in years, taken on my 10th birthday, back when disposable cameras still had dates printed in the corner. In the picture, I sat at the edge of a picnic table alone, a crooked paper crown on my head and a slice of melting cake in front of me. In the background, Ryan was opening a large gift, surrounded by our parents and a crowd of laughing kids, none of whom seemed to notice that the birthday girl wasn't smiling. I cropped the photo slightly, added a soft sepia tone, and wrote only this in the caption: "Some things don't change." But I did. Within minutes, the comments began to pour in, some confused, some supportive, many trying to read between the lines. A few asked if I was okay. One simply said, "I remember this day." Another wrote, "You deserved more then. You deserve more now." But I didn't answer. I turned off my phone, set it on the windowsill, and walked barefoot across the cool floor of the home I had bought with my own money, on my own terms, without anyone's permission or applause. Outside, the ocean roared with its usual indifference, beautiful and dangerous and endless. I sat on the edge of the deck and listened. They were all screaming in my comments now, desperate to be heard, to be forgiven, to be remembered. But for once, I wasn't the one waiting to be seen. I wasn't the one asking for anything. I wasn't even angry. I was free. And in the silence I had chosen, I finally understood something that years of noise had never taught me. Sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is nothing. And sometimes, the only way to win is to disappear just long enough for them to notice the empty space where you used to stand and realize it was never empty at all.